How's it going, everybody? My name is Antonio, and I'm on the barbecue today on September 22nd with James Sykes, the CEO of Baselode Energy, a uranium exploration company with assets in the Athabasca Basin in Canada. Who's not here with us today, though, is your financial advisor. This conversation is not going to include any recommendations to buy nor sell anything. It's going to be just a talk. It's going to be a casual talk between two people who you've likely never met. So be careful who you listen to. And it's also going to be a conversation that's general and impersonal in nature, as well as a conversation that will include, well, again, no financial nor professional advice of any sorts. And it's definitely not a conversation that you want to use as independent research because, number one, fair disclaimer and honest confession, Baselode is a paying advertiser on this channel. And also this conversation is going to include a lot of forward-looking statements about uncertain events that may or may not happen in the future. Take a minute to pause the video and read the full warning that is on your screen right now, because the mineral exploration, development, and mining industry is among the highest risk industries out there. So if you care about your money and you don't like losing it, you want to head over to setter.com and do more research, read the company's official filings, figure out what's going on, and talk to someone who is capable of helping you make your own decisions in the end. That all said, James, thank you for investing your time with me, sir.
No problem. Always a pleasure, Antonio. I really enjoy our conversations, even off the air, that people don't get to witness.
Is my disclaimer amusing to you?
Yeah. Do you have that written down, or do you honestly you have that memorized and you go?
Well, I have points of stuff that I have to say, but I've just said it so many times that it's basically the same thing all over again.
Yeah.
But I actually do mean it, though.
Yeah. No, I know. No, I like it. It's very well done.
But it's important because a lot of people would, they would stumble onto a video like this. They would hear, a CEO being super excited and all these things. They would think, oh, this is the next best thing. But in reality, there's high risk, and that's not to say stay away, never touch these stocks. But it's more to say think about the risk and where does this fit in your portfolio in terms of size, because you don't want to put your next rent's money into this. You don't want to put your kids' college fund and so on and so forth. So that's why I bring these out, and I hope someone listens to them. So yeah, what's been going on? It's been about a month or so since we last sat down, and you've been active. What have you done for me lately?
What have I done for you lately? We put out results. We completed a drill program that I think was super successful. We've done a very good job of realizing the expanded potential of the Ackio system, not only at Pod 7, which is where we do see a lot of growth potential, and that's you can see that in the news releases from throughout the drill program with radioactivity results, but we've really expanded the width, the strike extent, and the depth extent of mineralization at Pod 7, and it still remains open for additional exploration along it. We've got mineralization that pod needs to be defined in better detail. And we hit mineralization at the overburden contact Pod 7. So instead of having one zone mineralization at that overburden basement contact, now we have two zones. It just represents more shallow mineralization. And this is, when you think of it in a global perspective, this is some of the most readily accessible uranium mineralization in the world. It's Pod 1, we're 25 meters beneath the surface. Pod 2, we see it at 32 meters. But that's only in two drill holes. We haven't defined enough to know that how much, to the extent that pod is exposed at that contact. So it could be quite large, could be quite small. We don't know. We just have to put in more drill holes to figure that out. Because the more that we have at shallow depths, the better it is.
Mm.
So yeah, and the depth potential with the news release we put out a couple days ago, we had the results from holes 81 to 91. There are some of the drill holes were targeting the edges of the pods, and if you look at the plan map, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. We're going to be following up the news with the better visual presentation, so you can see where we're hitting, and the results were to be expected, I would say. They're the edges of the system. We're kind of shutting down where we think the system is. Some of the holes proved otherwise. That it looks like the system is getting larger in those areas, which is great. Hole 88, though, which was it's a top 10 drill hole. based on results from Ackio. Great hole, absolute great hole, and it's right in near the middle of two zones. And in hole 88, those two zones look like they're one, and it extends further at depth than what we had previously modeled. So there's new depth potential that exists at Ackio. Further south in that, hole 82 has hit the best intercept that we've seen beneath 200 meters from surface. So we're seeing this more of a continuous occurrence of higher grades and greater thicknesses of mineralization occurring at depth over in that area. And so that when you start thinking about some of these basement hosted systems, the Eagle Point's a great example where mineralization was relatively shallow in a basement hosted system. And they have traced that thing down to a kilometer depth, if not mistaken, out of 1,400 meters beneath the surface now. They just keep finding more and more and more. Eagle Point is a big system that just keeps giving. We're starting to see that the possibility that, yes, this is a similar vertical system, or with that depth potential expansion to go down in that area. So Ackio remains completely wide open in many facets. So hopefully that helps, and I think it's been successful. I'm also a shareholder, obviously, but I'm very happy with what we've done, and I see nothing but really good potential out of Ackio. And near surface mineralization, our grades are high, our widths are high. We've got what we believe is another system that will keep on giving.
Right. And so, but this whole 88, this is from the deepest part of the Ackio system that you mentioned. Because you drill what half a percent uranium, wouldn't you expect the grades to be higher though, following your thesis of Athabasca 2.0? Or are they getting higher as you're going deeper?
They're consistent. They're consistent with what we're seeing at near surface, and they're consistent that we're seeing at depth. And there is no rhyme or reason in Athabasca to have higher concentrations of mineralization at depth. Again, it really depends on the plumbing system. If you think about it, the unconformity deposits, the ones that occur right at the basement sandstone unconformity, those are typically your highest grade deposits. That's where you get your 5%ers, your 20%ers, your 40s, whatever. So, and those would be considered your most shallow basement hosted deposit, geologically speaking.
Okay.
So there's consistency is what we like to see, and consistency is what we are seeing.
Okay. And I want to talk to consistent, but I was just thinking about the grades actually, because you called them high grade, and I was like, okay, is it? And then I started thinking about it in my head. So 0.55%, that's 5.5 kilos out of a ton, 5.5 kilos by 2.2 to bring it over to pounds. That's 12 pounds per ton. Let's call it 70 a pound. That's $850 rock. It's high grade. It is high grade by standards of, like, if this is gold, this would be 50 grams.
2.5 gram. It's 2.5 gram per ton gold equivalent. If you use a 0.1% grade.
0.1%, yeah, but the 0.5, that would be something like 17 grams gold.
Oh, 0.5, yeah, 0.5, yes. Yeah. Sorry, 0.5 is
17 grams gold, that is. Okay, so I was just thinking around those lines, and I know you're not supposed to do equivalent just like that. This is very back of the envelope. This is nothing but forward-looking, all the disclaimers.
It puts things into context. It puts things into context that people can understand, because everybody understands gold.
Right. Yeah, right. But does this whole tell you anything more about continuity, though? Because the intercepts are narrow-ish. Like, they're not 100 meters.
No, they're not 100 meters. Not thickness, but on strike, they're showing that continuity, that these things are continuous on strike. Like, they are pearls on a string as well. And we're starting to realize that there is at least a second to third generation or orientation of these structures and mineralization.
But
that
so
we've drilled one direction, focus on one structural orientation. But now if you throw in the second one, we've always been drilling pretty well parallel to that and have not come in across it.
okay, and that's why. So vertically, so yeah, but you're talking about lateral consistency, I guess.
Well, yes, yeah, sorry, yeah.
Okay, and vertically, I mean that's what I'm asking about because vertical consistency is important.
Vertically, yes, vertically, laterally, they're discs. Like, just think of them as discs. Take a frisbee and stick it in the rock,
Right,
something like that.
Well, but it's exactly those pots that I'm trying to better understand, those discs that you name it, because you have 9 pots of mineralization, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm not exactly sure what that even means in relation to your end goal, which I assume is still finding an open pitable deposit that can be brought into production during this cycle. So an ambitious goal. How does that relate to that goal of yours?
By continuing to identify the amount of mineralization that we have at Ackio, that is within the upper 100 meters of the Ackio system, things that could be incorporated into an open pit. So with pods 1 and 2, we are starting to realize that. What is the magic number that you would need for an open pit? That is something I do not have. I am not able to answer that at all. I can use previous examples. I can use historic examples from open pits within the Athabasca in northern Saskatchewan, and I can say that some of these have gone into production with less than 5 million pounds. Some of them have had 0.3%. Some of them have had 0.2%, 0.4%, 0.7%, 1%. They've had variable grades, but we have seen production in northern Saskatchewan with anywhere from hundreds of thousands of pounds in their own respective pods, or their own respective, let's call it sub-deposit or pearl on a string, sub 100,000 or sub 1 million pounds. And we've also seen grades anywhere from 0.15 up to plus 20%. So it's the narrative is still there. It's not a concept of grade, because grade is so variable. It's not a concept of scale. What's left? It's economics. Can you pull this out of the ground at a significant margin to what you're gonna sell it for?
Right.
So the more that we can discover in that fashion, because open pit, near surface open pits, historically, of any commodity globally, mining, are much cheaper to operate than underground operations. If we don't have to build a mill, again, there's a huge capex saving.
Yeah.
So if this looks like a satellite deposit to a system that requires uranium to go into a mill, awesome. That's great. So yeah, we need to prove it up to be as large as possible. We've focused on a lot of the low-hanging fruit, a lot of the mineralization that goes down to about 200 meters ish, or maybe 150 more accurately. And that's what Ackio looks like right now.
Right.
But now seeing that better depth potential, understanding the structural nature of this, and even the mirror target helps understand all of this, that such a huge plumbing system, that this is not a structural system that is just going to terminate like that. This has the potential to be a deep system, and we're starting to realize that at Ackio. So they're having a resource and then having potential to grow that, or sorry, having a resource that could go into production, and then having the ability to grow that, something like Eagle Point, would be a big takeaway for Baselode, our investors. It's just that's what we're trying to do.
How long is that going to take? Because you made that discovery about 2 years ago now, in 2021, after the start of your first drill program. So it was the first drill program discovery. Great. But they often say it takes 3 to 5 years before you can go from discovery to a resource. Well, now 2 years in, that means you still have 1 to 3 years to get into a resource. Is that a doable time frame?
Absolutely. We were originally anticipating doing a resource by the end of this year. We thought that we might have had everything kind of laid out and figured out. But now, with especially pod 7, like, there's so much that we don't know about pod 7 now. We've extended it on strike. And it still remains open. We've extended it at depth and it remains open. We've hit unconformity mineralization in 2 drill holes in pod 7. It remains open on there. Because of our drill orientation last year, we have to go back and re-drill it with the same orientation that we did this year to get a better understanding of how far it extends to the south. So there's a lot of drilling we need to still do on pod 7. And we're trying to get everything into an indicated category. So 25-meter drill hole spacing, basically, to be able to come out with our first resource.
Okay, so you're not going for an inferred?
No.
Okay. Yeah. But that's you haven't done all that much drilling. How many meters have you drilled by now?
30,000.
30? Okay.
We're 30,000. Yeah.
Okay.
After this year, we're at 31,050 to be, rough.
Okay. And do you feel comfortable?
116 drill holes.
Right. Okay. And they're not, we talked about they're not that deep. But do you feel comfortable enough with with understanding the structural controls in each one of those pods? Like, are the structural controls consistent as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Those. So that's the thing. If you look at our presentation, you'll see a plan map with the 9 pods on there. Right. Those are all constrained at a 0.1% cutoff. So even what we report in news at 0.05, we're restraining those models at a 0.1, so even higher cutoff.
Okay.
But they're pretty reliable and pretty constrained, and they follow these structures nicely. There is a lot of mineralization that is above 0.1 that lies in between a number of those pods that we felt like we couldn't properly constrain them to any one of the pods. So it's almost as if there's disseminated mineralization in the areas in between that look like they're non-mineralized, or miniature vein areas coming through there.
Is that novel to you based on what you've researched before? Like, as you're drilling more and getting a better understanding of this deposit, is there another deposit in or around the basin that you can start comparing yourself to?
Yeah, Eagle Point. I used to feel comfortable with the comparison to what do you call that? A Raven Horseshoe, which I think there is still a considerable comparison there. But I'm now starting to see some good reasoning behind an Eagle Point system, and that's the same type of thing we were seeing at Rough Rider, how your structural system really just plunged off and went deep very quickly. Eagle Point does that same thing, and they just keep going at depth and depth and depth and finding more and more and more. We realize this is a big system. We realize Ackio was always part of a bigger structure. We're pretty comfortable that we have a structural play in mind that works. And when you really dive into that structural nature, it is deep. It is a deep-rooted system. But that's how we targeted everything in the first place. When we targeted all of or picked up all of our projects, they're all based on what we thought were mammoth scale, deep-rooted structural systems, because you want to move fluids. So let's move as many fluids as you possibly can. The big structures are the ones that do. So yeah, we think that this is, you take the mirror targets that we drilled, for example, 5 drill holes northeast of Ackio, covered a 300-meter swath of land in that drilling. Nothing but alteration. Like the entire area is just heavily altered, indicates the fluids are moving through there. There are 2 drill holes had uranium snippets or radioactivity snippets. We don't have assays back yet, but there's radioactivity in those rocks. So there's a separate uranium fluid event in that area as well. So you're drawing in all of the right fluids that you need. They don't necessarily have to precipitate in the same areas all the time, but the best way to find uranium is to follow uranium. So maybe these snippets that we're seeing out in that area are also something that are occurring at depth.
Do you have a reason to believe that mineralization would extend to the southeast? Because if you look to the north, that's where the 92 Energy Gemini project is, which is essentially Ackio, but extended. So could it be because I believe sometimes the way people look at it is that you sort of have one end of the deposit and then 92 Energy has the other end. But is it possible that they sort of have the tip of the iceberg and then you have the iceberg, or vice versa?
I think they've got a how do you phrase it? We've got the shallowest part. There's no doubt about that, as we've confirmed now 2 pods with overburden mineralization, and most of their drill intercepts have not been shallow. They do have some shallow, very encouraging drill intercepts, which make it quite encouraging. But for the vast majority, their mineralization is deeper. That being said, though, again, with what we're seeing with mineralization being deeper on our end, it's almost like an A shape. That right where my knuckles are is where we're seeing that mineralization at the overburden contact. Then everything dips down towards, like my finger side, everything dips down towards 92E side. But on my arm side, everything dips down still onto the Ackio side.
Okay.
And that's the structural nature. But when you consider that it could be a vertical structure, now you start thinking third dimension, that things are coming down as a sheet. Well, the sheet isn't a sheet. The sheet has a thickness to it. But once you start employing that idea, then this A-frame, you can twist that around. I don't know if I can make a U shape, and you can keep that system repeating, that you've got systems like this coming down, systems like that coming down. You create your structural crosshatch network and follow that down. So both sides have that same potential for deeper underground mineralization.
And that's your pearls on a string, I guess.
That's the pearls on a string, exactly.
Okay. Does some of the stuff that you've seen coming back from the labs, does any of that change how you're going to approach next year's exploration program?
Yeah, well, this year's drilling and again the results from 88, 82, even 84 they encourage us to look deeper. So
Okay.
that changes the strategy a little bit. That yes, we've been looking at the low-hanging fruit. We've been looking at mineralization mostly above 200 meters, mostly above 150 meters, but now we can't ignore anything that is deeper. So we have to deploy a strategy next year to explore deeper.
But still delineation more than
Yes.
exploration.
Yes. Oh, we have to follow up pod 7.
Hmm.
Pod 7 requires a lot of work. So
Okay.
that will be a main focus next year.
Deeper holes more expensive though.
Yes.
Okay. So how much money do you have? How much money are you going to have left at the end of this year after all the work has been completed?
Probably around 7 to 7.5 million.
Oh, but so you're good for next year's drilling.
Yeah. Well, that's a mixture of working capital and flow through. We should have about 3 to 3.5 million flow through remaining for next year. And that's, yeah, we are looking to do some additional geophysics though on some of the projects. So we might take about $1 million for that. But otherwise we'd have 2 million to start up next year's drill program. We're considering going back to Catharsis again in the winter. We'd be looking at a helicopter operation, so costs will be a little bit higher for that one. But that's the right thing to get to some of our targets that are a little bit more difficult to access. But we feel that where we drilled is unresolved, whether we still want to go back there or just quickly do some tests around some other targets, which has a logistical strategy to it on the back end to keep more of the project in good standing. So that is an idea. And again, so there's $1 million project for that. We would like to get back onto Shadow. We're looking at doing another drill application permit for Shadow, kind of getting ourselves, the First Nations in the area and the government all sitting down together to have consultation between three-way. Hasn't been working out just between us and the First Nations, just trying to consult between each other. It's 3 years of consultation ongoing, and there's been no advancement. So hopefully, by bringing all three parties back to the table and in the same discussions, that we can move this to everyone's benefit. And I think if you've seen what we've done at Ackio, we've done a great job of not disturbing the land. Like, you couldn't even tell we were ever there drilling 30,000 meters. We've chopped down a couple trees to put and built drill pads on timber, and that timber's reclaimed after every time we move the drill off the area. That timber gets reclaimed. The sites all get reclaimed. You cannot tell that we were ever there. They've done an absolutely amazing job of keeping it very nice and pristine. because that's been one of the things that we were continuously hearing about for hindering us to explore shadow. Is that, oh yeah, we're going to come in, we're going to create a huge disturbance on land. Like, no, we're not. We may be geologists, but we do respect the land, and we respect your traditional ways. We want you to keep hunting up here. We don't want to make this huge mess. It's not how we roll.
That is not a lie, because I interviewed two of your few geologists not too long ago, and they explained to me. Well, actually, people can watch that for themselves if they want to. I interviewed two of Baselode's camp geologists, and it was a good interview. I'll put up the link somewhere so people can see it. But we talked a lot about that as well. So, what I've been thinking though, James, is capital is always scarce. Now you have 7 million. That's not a low number. And I guess you're in a good position relative to some other uranium companies. But you also have multiple projects that are not necessarily the main focus right now. Have you ever played with the idea of selling them, optioning them out, something along those lines?
Not really. We know this market's going to be great. We do have the ability to raise money, and we can put our money to good use with moderate drill programs. We staked all of our projects with the understanding that they're all on some very deep prospective structures. And as selfish as it is, I just don't want to share any prize of the pie with anybody. We're pretty confident that we've got multiple discovery on our projects. That's why they were all staked. We didn't stake ground to drill and not make a discovery. We thought we picked what looked like the best areas for discoveries, and we would like to see that through ourselves. If it does become a hindrance and we can't move projects in a timely fashion, then yes, then we would look for a partner, and especially lesser projects. But our three main projects, Hook, Catharsis, and Shadow, we want them in our portfolio. We have staked other projects that we call Bear. It's amalgamation of claims here and there. That big staking rush. Cameco land went up for staking, and a lot of companies got into it. Canalaska, Sky Harbor, Standard Uranium. Yep. So yeah, your usuals. So it was quite a fun time there. But we think Bear looks prospective, which is why we acquired it.
Yeah, quite a fun time. Yeah, I suppose for the geologists. I'm not necessarily sure it was fun for a lot of the shareholders, because these things are not. Well, they're not cheap. They're not.
Staking is the cheapest thing you can do.
No, but I mean doing work there. Drilling. You haven't drilled on Bear. I was not talking about you specifically, about some of the other companies, but drilling and not finding anything and then leaving it behind, as you said. Not a great option, not as fun for the shareholders. So
that's very true.
Talking about that though, so you're liking all of these results. The market doesn't seem to care too much, and your stock is actually underperforming some of the ETFs that you're part of. How come? You're talking to investors every day? What's going on? Are you getting any feel of why it's underperforming?
Not entirely. No, I honestly don't really know why we're underperforming, because I do keep hearing questions about grade, and people have got grade as apparently number one concept in their mind, especially if you're in the Athabasca. You're pigeonholed to a certain grade that is basically required to come out of the ground, or required to come out in a news release. Let's put it that way. Doesn't mean those grades come out of the ground. Heck no, it's quite the opposite. I've held on to 86% uranium in my hands. Guess where it is today? Still in the ground. Does it have a future? Heck no, not yet. If there is a future, that's still 10 years off. So now we're talking, 25 years from discovery.
Wow.
Crazy stuff like that. So 86% uranium, just leave it in the ground. What good is it? 0.5% uranium, that's come out. That has come out many times, especially if it's within 30 meters of the surface.
But I still don't get it. I've told you that before, and I've asked you that before, but I still don't get what the problem necessarily is there. Because if you convert it just to calculate what is the value of the rock, and you calculate, you know, the mining of it all and everything, just to go down to the margin, as in this is an actual business that's supposed to generate cash flow. Just calculate back of the envelope, some type of cash flow calculation to figure out, is this going to work or not? I mean, I'm not smart by absolutely any means. So how come is the market not getting that? What I feel like I'm missing something here.
Yeah, I'm obviously in the same boat. I'm missing that as well, because I look at some of the other deposits out there too. Global Atomics Dasa, it's world class, no doubt about it. That's huge, beautiful grades. That's a phenomenal deposit, and you know, I wish them well moving forward. Boss is making huge advancements. Again, great deposit, great size, good grades. They're making some headways there too. I think that we're still behind. We're still lagging. Obviously, people don't know how much we have. We don't know how much we have. There are too many variables at play to say, hey, look, this is how much we have. Pod 7, again, so underexplored, depth underexplored. That I think people just need to see a number, and that could be another hindrance. But I don't know. I'm comfortable with what we have. I like the idea of what we have. I like the idea of everything that we've seen so far and how we have developed it so far. But yeah, it's not an arrow. You know, it's definitely not an arrow. It's not a 200 million pound beast that's sitting there, that's within trucking distance of a mill. No, we know that for a fact. Okay, can it exist at depth? Anything's possible until you drill it off. But the fact is that doesn't exist right now. But it is still what we think is of sufficient size, with sufficient grades, in proximity to a mill that can handle uraninite, that is built for uraninite, that with low deleterious elements. Like, we basically have no arsenic, no selenium, no moly. So it's clean ore. I shouldn't call it ore. It's clean, elementally clean system, which is great for a mill. So there's a lot of upside potential to this. And again, just if we consider it as a satellite to a larger operation, that's where the potential is. We're not going to build a mill. There's no doubt about that. And it's not even a question of grade or size or anything like that. So if you look at the jurisdiction that we're in the eastern Athabasca. We're 70 kilometers away from Key Lake. We're probably 140 kilometers away from Rabbit Lake, and a little bit further from McLean Lake. You've got 3 mills in the area. Even if we had a 50 million or 100 million pound deposit, what are the chances that the governing bodies in Canada, the CNSC especially, would say, "Oh yeah, you guys can build a mill, standalone mill." Then
but there's no need for that.
No, exactly.
Those mills can operate more on a higher rate than what those mines that they're coupled to produce. So they want more pounds. They wouldn't say no to more. I don't assume.
That's what I'd like to believe as well. Yeah, it's all speculation. It's all speculation. There's only, the mill operators and the miners are the only ones who can answer that. But yeah, it's all speculation, and it's a good one.
I'm sorry for interrupting them, but I'm gonna forget this because I feel like it's a good question. How's the topography between you and those? Like, is there a way that you can use gravity to your advantage over some super long conveyor belt? No. Okay.
No, road access. Again, we're 30 kilometers as the crow flies from Ackio to the road that services McArthur River and Key Lake. So the road accessibility is there. That's not 30 kilometers is not a far distance. That's a pretty easy road to put in. Just have to make sure that the right materials are there.
And is it flat? Because you're at the edge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's just flat.
It's still flat. Yeah, it's flat.
Okay. Good stuff. I didn't intend to get that much in depth, but it was a good overview. Anything else we're missing? Anything else that you're still waiting for assays to come back? I suppose over Q4 you're going to have all of them out.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Q3, and probably towards the early part of Q4. And we've done mineralogical studies that we'll release, and we'll continue to do some educational pieces, things that I think people should be aware of. Finally get around. I think now is the time to finally start putting things together in terms of, here's an Athabasca deposit that's been mined. It's got less than 1 million pounds and it's been mined. So
Wow.
here's some deposits that have been 0.2%, 0.3% that have been mined. So again, is it a question of grade, or is it a question of size, or is it a question of something else completely? I opt for number 3, which just comes down to the boiling end of economics in the end.
Right. Right. Good stuff. I'll be looking forward to that. I hope I can be part of the educational process too, because I can use some education. So yeah, thank you for the overview today.
Thanks a lot for the discussion, Antonio. Great questions.